for SPAN, the Safe House Progressive Alliance for Nonviolence. Key to our mission is to create a just and equitable world for women and their families. And I'm standing here to oppose Senate Bill 1070 and the subsequent amendments to that bill, because they are creating fear in the hearts and minds of my clients. This fear will prohibit victims, survivors, and bystanders of domestic violence or other violent crimes from coming forward. It creates a community where people avoid each other instead of a community where people help each other. And I would recommend that you take your resolutions a little bit further to include an overall boycott of Arizona, just a general boycott, and cut ties to businesses in Colorado that have offices or headquarters in Arizona. I would also ask that you send a strong message and pass comprehensive immigration reform to help us create a safe community where people work together.
Currently reside in Denver, Colorado. I did attend the University of Colorado after high school. One of the reasons that I moved to Boulder for college was that it was a city that embraced diversity, and that was a place that I think would stand strong against racial profiling and discrimination and the values that are central to our country. I'm here today to speak on behalf of the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition. We are a statewide membership-based coalition of 65 organizations across the state, and we're proud to have 6 member organizations here in the city of Boulder. And I'm here to speak in strong support of the resolution as you have it written and proposed this evening, in opposition of 1070 in Arizona, in opposition to any law that is vaguely written that could potentially codify racial profiling. And I think that is the problem with the Arizona law, is that it's vaguely written and it leaves the door open for individual law enforcement officers and police officials to potentially use racial profiling or discrimination to identify someone who they have reasonable suspicion is in the country illegally. So I strongly support, on behalf of the coalition, the language of the resolution. But most importantly, I think in this moment, is the opportunity that you have and that the City Council has to speak very strongly in support of comprehensive immigration reform that I believe is really the heart of the issue here. 1070 will likely not hold up, I think, against constitutional challenges. It's going to be challenged with lawsuits, and let's hope that the bill actually doesn't get implemented. But more importantly, you have the opportunity, and the City of Boulder has the opportunity to build on this very historic moment that the Arizona law has generated. Communities, families, students, workers are living under a broken immigration system. And the Arizona law has created an environment where the whole country is watching and looking for courage and leadership from appointed and elected officials like yourselves. So it's a moment to speak for federal reform, against vague laws that embrace racial profiling. Strongly hope that you will ask City Council to adopt this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. I think we got a couple good comments I really liked. If it's appropriate, Lily Smith, what you mentioned, really liked her point of view on human rights for immigrants, or people who might be here legally, illegally, but are just severing their ties to the Latino community is going to result in more hardships for the Latino community. And I've heard that from other people too, the people that work with the Latino community, that's going to be a real big problem in terms of reporting crimes or working with law enforcement, trusting law enforcement, even if they are legal residents. There'll still be a divide between law enforcement and the community.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming, those pro and those who are con. That's what our nation is built out of, trying to have some type of solidarity and give everybody a chance to voice their agreement or disagreement. I personally and morally and ethically agree with the city manager on principle against the Arizona law, because I too have concerns about the inference of racial profiling. Although facially, when I read the statute, it does in part mirror the federal immigration law. Arizona governor also signed the bill number 2281, the ethnic studies ban. Additionally, Wall Street Journal pointed out that there is a policy that pushes the school system not to hire and get rid of teachers whose accents are arbitrarily judged as being too thick. There may be more to this law that suggests racism, ethnic cleansing, but also a cry for help from the federal government to embrace comprehensive immigration reform. Whereas the national immigration system is broken. We need to make changes to the current system. We need to provide legal status and avenues to work so human dignity is upheld. There is a right to regulate and a right to migrate, and find the balance to ensure that human rights are protected while the rule of law is maintained. However, having said that, it is my hope that we do not distract ourselves with throwing stones at Arizona. I know people in Arizona who are not racist. We need to stay focused on our community. That our homeless is not discriminated against, getting rid of racial threats in our schools, supporting the proposed legislation of the DREAM Act, stand in solidarity with our gay and lesbian and transgender community, discouraging racial profiling in our own community. Focus on legal migration so that law enforcement can focus on our safety from terrorists, drug dealers, and human traffickers. Promote sustainable economies across the border and beyond, whereby ideally migration can become a choice and not a necessity.
I wish I would have written down comments as my fellow commissioner had prepared. It would have helped a little. I would just like to say I agree with those who spoke and said that our immigration system in this country is broken. This country has a long history of focusing attention on a select group of immigrants, and those immigrants have suffered over periods of time within this history. And in my mind, right now, that's what we're doing again. And the Arizona law is an example of that. I liked what Commissioner Stewart said about the racial profiling piece. I read the legislation, and it says in there not without regard to race, ethnicity, but I also believe that the majority of people that you would see pulled over and asked for their ID are not going to be white. And that's my personal opinion on that, and partially informed by the fact that there were so many pieces in the legislation that referred to tribal ID and looking at protections for tribal members who happen to live in Arizona. And my feeling is if it weren't necessary to differentiate between people who are tribal members who reside in Arizona legally and those who may have brown skin, brown eyes, brown hair, and might look similar to the differentiation between those two groups, to me indicates that there is some danger for racial profiling as a result of this legislation. And I think that that's the biggest fear, because we have had a tendency in this country, for one reason or another, to scapegoat different groups of immigrants. We can look at Jewish immigrants, we looked at Irish immigrants, and I think that we're kind of in that phase at this particular point in time, looking at immigrants, presumably looking at immigrants coming from Mexico. I think that's a dangerous path for us to go on, and so as a result, I would be very much in favor of recommending that City Council advocate to the best of their abilities within their own legislative agenda in support of comprehensive immigration reform. I think that this is a system that needs to be fixed.